Okay, so we're back with the second video now in the Django series, and I still have my terminal opened here where we ran the migrations. So if you didn't follow along with the ending part of the last video where we created our first table in the database, don't worry because we're going to be creating a new table here as well. So if you didn't understand this, I'm going to go more into detail now. And yeah, so the last video we were just basically running through the file structure and looking at what's inside of it. So there's two main files here that you want to look at. One is models here, and this is where all of your table structures are. So here we created a table in the last video where it has a column called first name and a column called last name. And we'll create a second table down here in a second. And then the views, views.py here is where we write what should be returned to the user when they request a certain URL. So for example, when they go to, let's say this was running on codewithme.co.za. So when they go to codewithme.co.za/Theo, we can define here what it should send back to them, to the browser or to whatever requested that URL. Okay, so let's go back to the models for now and create a new model in here. And I'm going to call this class, and we'll say this is a person. So person. And again, this inside of the brackets here, we need to inherit from models.model. And if you're wondering where this models thing comes from, it's automatically imported into the file up here. It says from django.db import models here. So when we create our class down here, inside of the brackets, we need to say models.model. And what this model here is it's a template class for how a model should look like. And here we're creating our own model called person, and it's going to use this template as the default starting point. So we don't need to create a lot of stuff here that we would have had to create if we didn't inherit from model here. So okay, now that that's out of the way, inside of this class we need to define what columns our table will have. So I'm basically going to create a copy of the name table here. I'm going to say it has a first name column, first_name, and this is going to be equal to models, which again is this thing up here that we imported, models dot, and there's a few different field options we have here. We just want to use text, so it's char field, and we need to give it a max length. So max_length is equal to, and we'll say 200 here. So the 200 here is just what the max length of this field will be. No one's name should really be more than 200 characters long, so it's just safe to use that. You can also use 100 there. No one's name is 100 characters long. And in the next field here, we'll create, like, let's say favorite number, favorite_number, and we'll set this to models.integer field. So up here we're using char field, and here we'll use integer field, and we'll give this a default value. So we'll say default is equal to 10, for example. And this means that if we create a new person and we don't pass in what's their favorite number, by default it will set it equal to 10. Now another reason why this is important is because if this person table already existed, which it doesn't, but if it did and we were adding this favorite number to a table that already exists, there's going to be entries already in that table that don't have a favorite number. So in that case, you'll have to give a default here for what to give to the entries that were already there and don't have a favorite number. So after this, we need to create our function like we have it up here. And this function just basically says what's the default field inside of our table. So I'm going to say def__str__. And this needs to take self as a parameter here. So this str function here just tells Django what the default field in our table is, and the self here is something we need to pass to any functions that are inside of a class. So that's just default Python behavior there. And inside of this function, we can just say return self.firstName. So we're returning the first name variable that's inside of this class. And now it makes a bit more sense why we say self.firstName, because here we also have a first name variable in the other class. So we're specifying it's the one in its own class, self.firstName. So I hope that makes sense. Now once we have this set up, you need to go into the main project, because remember right now we're working in name here, and the main project is actually called YouTube here. So you need to go into the settings file there, and under installed apps you need to add in a new entry like I have down here with name in there, or whatever you named your second project. So I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, you can go back to the first video and see how we created the second project there. And yeah, I'm going to close this, and once we have all of that set up, we head into our terminal here. We're going to clear this, and we do python manage.py and then make migrations. And it says it's going to create the model person. So it's going to create a table in our database called person. And I'm going to say python manage.py, because remember everything needs to run through manage.py. And I'm going to say migrate. And it says, okay, it created a table called person. So I'm going to look inside that database now, and now we should have name underscore person here. So the reason why it says name underscore person is because the project here is called name and the model inside of it is called person. So that's why we're saying name underscore person here. And you can see here it has two fields, first name and favorite number, which is what we defined. And it also has this ID field here. So that's just something Django creates by default. It's the primary key. If you want to know more about primary keys, make sure you watch the MySQL playlist on my channel. And yeah, that's basically how you'd set up your database. So now let's see how we would create a view and then actually display that view to a user. So I'm going to open up the view file here, views.py, and firstly close all of these folders. You want to make sure you open the correct views file. So we want to open the views file in the same project that we created our model in, and that's going to be name here. So name and then the views file here. And in the views file, we just want to import that model at the top. So I'm going to say from .models, and this .models here, we're speaking about the models file here. And I'm going to say import, and let's look at what we named that. We named it person here. So we're importing this class. So from .models import person. Okay, I hope that makes sense. And then one more thing we need to import up here is from Django.http import JSON response. So again, I hope that makes sense. We just need to import this. I'll explain what this is in a second. Okay, so firstly we need to create a function. So I'm going to call it def people. And this function doesn't take any parameters. Actually, it does take one, which is request. So this is the request that's coming in from the browser or whatever tool is making the request to this API. And inside of the function, we need to basically construct the data that we're going to send back. So firstly, let's get all of the information that's inside of this person's table. So remember, here is just the template of the table, but we can use this to actually go into the database and fetch all of the records from inside there. So to do this, we're going to create a variable called all people here, all underscore people. By the way, I'm just making up these variable names. You can name them whatever you want. And all people is going to be equal to person, which is the name of our model, person.objects.all. And this is how we get all of the entries inside of our database for that specific model. So we're getting all of the entries that are of type person inside of the person table. I hope that makes sense. And then now we want to construct the data that we're sending back. So I'm going to say data. Again, this is just a variable. I can name it whatever I want. Is equal to, and I'm going to put a list here. Actually, I'm going to use curly braces because a JSON object is a key value pair. So when we use square brackets, we're just creating a list of items like A, B, and whatever. When we use curly brackets, we're creating key value pairs. So for example, A can be 1, and then the next item is B can be 2, and so on. We want key value pairs. And okay, I'm going to move this onto a new line so that I have some space to work with. And I'm going to say people and put my colon here. And the key is going to be people, and it's going to have all of our objects in here, all of the people that we have inside of our person table. So I'm going to say list, and list will basically, how do I explain this? If we have a list, like for example, A, B, C, what this list will do is it will go through each item in this list and return them one by one. So it'll return A, and then B, and then C. I hope that makes sense. So what we should see inside of here when this runs is we should see people, and next to it we should see a list like this, and it should have A, B, and then C, and so on for each person that's inside of our people table. That might be a bit difficult for you to imagine and understand, but once you see it in action, you'll understand what's happening. So I'm going to say all people here, and I'm going to say dot values. So the reason why I'm doing it this way is because I only want to show specific values. So here we're taking first name and favorite number, but let's say I only want to return back the first names, not the favorite number and all of that. Then here under values, I can just pass in as a string first underscore name. So when someone requests this specific view, it will send back all the people that's inside the person table, but it will only send back their first name, not value, not their favorite number along with it. If we wanted to include favorite number, we can put a comma next to this and add in a new string here and say favorite number. But here I'm only going to return first name. Okay, so that's all we need to do. Now we need to do at the bottom here, return JSON response, which is what we imported up here, and then data. So this is a bit confusing to understand. Basically, up here what we created is a Python dictionary, but the web browser or whatever application is making this request, it doesn't want a Python dictionary, it wants a JSON object, which is similar to a Python dictionary, but it's not the exact same thing. So this function here just converts our Python dictionary into a JSON object and then sends it out. I hope that makes sense to everyone, and I hope this entire section here where we covered the views makes sense to everyone. And yeah, there's one more step we need to do before we can finally complete this, which is we need a file in here called urls.py. So I'm just going to right click on the folder here and create a new file, and it will be called urls.py. And inside of this file here, we just need to import a few things at the top. Firstly, we need to do from Django.urls import path. And then we need to do import views here. So this views here is referring to the views file here. Now we can do it this way, but the problem is if there's a library that you installed in Python which is also called views, it's going to cause an error here. So I'm going to say from dot meaning the current folder we're in, import views. So this is just a better way to do it, because since we have this dot here, Python will know we mean the views file that is in this folder. So okay, I'm going to go down a bit here. We imported everything that we need. And I'm going to create the special variable that we need called URL patterns. And I need to set this equal to my square brackets here. So this is a list of all the URLs the user is allowed to go to. So I'm going to add in my quotes here. Actually, I'm going to say path. So path is the function we imported up here, and it's how we create a path. And this is a function, so I need my brackets. And now we need to give it the route. So the route that it's going to have is, let's say, people. And then we need to tell it what view to return when someone requests /people. So it's going to return the view called, what did we name it here? People. In our views file here, we named it people. So I'm going to say we need to return views.people. And I hope that makes sense. I'll go through it one more time. So we imported the function called path here from Django.urls. Then we imported the entire views file, which is this file that we created here. And then we used a special variable that Django recognizes called URL patterns. And we set that equal to a list here. And inside of the list, we give all of the paths that the person is allowed to access when they come to our API or website or whatever. And we just created a path here called people. And people will return views.people. And what this views.people will return is, well, we already went over this. It will return all the people, but only their first names. So I hope that makes sense to everyone. And now that we have all of this created, remember there's two projects here. Name is not the main project. So we need to go inside of YouTube here, and we need to open URLs here. And then up here at the top where it says from Django.urls import path, there's another function that we also need here called include. So I just put a comma there and I said I want include as well. And now here we're going to add in a new path. By the way, before I add in a new path, notice we're using the same special variable here, URL patterns. So it's the same thing we created here. We're just creating our own URL files in our project. And in the main project, it also has its own URL paths. Okay, so we're going to add in a new path here. And this path is going to be, let's say, name here. So name /. And the function it's going to run here, so I'll put a comma. And the function it's going to run is include. And now we need to say what we're including. The reason why we need to use this include function is because the URLs file that we have is not inside of this project. It's inside of the name project that we created. So inside of here, inside of quotes, I'm going to say name.urls. So, okay, this is also a bit confusing to understand, but what's happening here is when we go to the main URL, like for example, if this API was running on codewithme.co.za, when we go to codewithme.co.za /name, it will start using this URL file instead of the main one here, okay? And in that URL file, it says when we go to /people, then run the views.people view here. And that view is what's going to return the data. So in other words, to get that data, we need to go to the main website, which is wherever we're running the server from, /name, and then /people. And then we'll get that data that we defined in views. So I know this is a bit of a long video and it's a bit confusing, but if you go over it a few times and maybe practice it on your own as well, you'll definitely get the hang of this. It doesn't really take that long to understand what's happening here. Okay, so I'm going to head back to my terminal now. Again, make sure you're in the correct folder. And I'm going to do python manage.py and run server. So when I run this, it shouldn't give any errors and it'll say starting development server. And this is the address it started it as. So I'm going to hold down Control and click on this address. And this will open it up in my browser. And remember, to get to that path, we need to go to /name and then /people. So let's head to that path now. /name /people. And I accidentally misspelled name there. Okay, so that then we can see now that it's returning us people here with the empty list here. That's because we haven't put anything inside of our database. Yeah, so in the next video, I'm going to show you how to add some data into our database using the admin panel, which Django actually gives us a ready-made admin panel that we can use to add data into our database tables and all of that. And yeah, we'll get into all of that in the next video. So for now, I'll see you guys in the next video.